have a guest today who's a national and international figure. He's a senior journalist and former Union Minister M.J. Akbar. Thank you very much,
Thank
sir.
you.
And today is a day when everyone is talking about 50 years of emergency. And while talking to him, we also realized that he was one of the victims of emergency.
No, not a very big victim. I will not exaggerate that. We were, let's say, I was a minor casualty. The real sacrifice was made by the Indian people and by a host of very big leaders. I had started a magazine at that time, which was owned by Nari Hira, who was the owner of Stardust. And he had a great vision and a great idea of starting India's first international magazine. But that never took off the ground because I refused to take a censored approach to editing. And that was that. But I was a minor casualty, I must say.
That was your first, stint as an editor.
First stint, yeah. I had been editor, but not the complete editor. He was the first stint as editor, yes.
Sir, you have seen emergency days, and you were covering emergency also that time. So can you just tell us what was the situation that time?
The situation was that the Indian, I must be very frank, emergency was imposed upon the whole of India. India was stunned. It was shocked. It could not believe it. But the people of India became silent. You could almost hear the silence. But they never became supine. They never accepted this. They believed in the ideology of the Indian Constitution, given to us in 1931, given to us in 1950. By a great generation of leaders, Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Ambedkar, the great leaders of the opposition, Jayaprakash Narayan, Deen Dayal Upadhyay, everybody worked together. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee worked together to give India a constitution of which Indians could be legitimately proud of. This was violated. And this was violated for nothing more important than Mrs. Indira Gandhi's desire to continue in power after a judgment which disqualified her from parliament. So she challenged the institutions of judiciary, of freedom, of media, and of course the people's right, which was essentially the fundamental aspect of democracy.
We have seen so many books written about emergency. Also, we have seen a movie which is there on emergency. But from a journalist perspective, when you were there, you must be a spectator for whole things that were happening around you, especially and in the field. What was the scenario that time? Had journalists surrendered to emergency, saying that, "Chalo, I should surrender and be safe." Be at home rather than in the prison?
The editors in the beginning protested. There were blank spaces on page 1, blank editorials signifying that what they had written had been censored. But, within a short while, the media sort of moved into a phase of silent protest, of great anger and a resonant anger. But nobody really had an alternative. I think the great danger of dictatorship is it becoming part of normal, a new normal.
New normal.
And that, I think, because no one really had any idea of what an alternative was, precisely because nobody had expected this.
Were you also forcing the end to this emergency sometimes? You had put up a deadline, okay, now maybe 1 year later this will end, 2 years later this will end.
Nobody really, to be honest, knew. But what we knew is that it became unsustainable because Mrs. Gandhi's son, Sanjay Gandhi, the younger son, not Rajiv. Rajiv Gandhi had nothing to do with this. But the younger son, Sanjay, became a kind of very arbitrary dictator. I mean, India experienced this forced sterilization. India experienced, a kind of collective dread of what would happen next because there were no checks and balances. There was no accountability. A young man's word became the law, all in the name of being good for the country. That's what one was learnt, that dictatorship really becomes very dangerous because dictators lose their balance and then justify this loss of balance in the name of the national good.
But dictatorship doesn't survive for long as far as a big democratic country like India is concerned. It is also true.
Well, that is what the dictators realized, that that it was not, that this absence of institutions could not be sustained.
Sir, all these things were mostly centered around Delhi and other cities. I'm asking you from a perspective of a journalist, what was happening in the villages? People in the villages down in Bihar maybe, or up in south, were they really disturbed with the emergency, or their life was normal?
No, after all, the Congress was defeated in 1977 by the villagers. Mrs. Gandhi lost her constituency, Raebareli, because of the villages. There was no real urban center. So, every single Congress leader, they were shocked and stunned. Who voted against them? The villagers.
So how did this entire feeling of anti-emergency percolated with censorship for media, with no social media, no internet connections around?
But the internet is not the first form of communication in life. I heard a very interesting story once when I went to a village late at night. And I asked, suddenly, there was no one there because I had arrived very late. The roads were very bad, somewhere in Bihar. And only one elderly man was still awake. And he, very good of him, gracious of him, he offered me a cup of tea, and I needed some half an hour's rest before I moved on. And while I was talking, he kept asking me about the latest financial scandal that was going on. And I I suppose foolishly asked him that, Chacha, how do you know so much? आप इतना कैसे जानते हैं? And he told me, he said, बाबुआ, हमारे मुल्क में खबर हवा पे चलती है. Word travels through the air, through conversations, through railway stations, through trains, through buses, where people who don't know each other talk. And this right to talk really was snatched away by the emergency. And that, for them, they understood this.
पळय तोपरी झबली माणे सगळे हाडल्यात हां. हे तांदूळ सामके पौष्टीक, भुरग्याक बरे. आणि हे मुगो तेल कालूच घेवन आयला दुकानांतल्यान.
मम्मा, तू इतल्या पयसल्यान हें घेवन येयला?
मागीर म्हाका तुमची काळजी ना तर? राव गो, हांव तुका कितें तरी खावपाक करता.
आगे
पळय गो. शी, पाड पोडू हांचे. कसलो सावार आयला देव जाणा. कितले आशेन हाडिल्ले हांवें सगळे.
मम्मा, तू चड चिंतू नाका. राव, हे पळय, सगळ्यान शुद्ध पंचामृत, जे दिता शुद्धता आणि पौष्टिकतेची हमी. आणि त्याच वांगडा ही वेगवेगळी शुद्ध तेलां आणि बरेच प्रॉडक्ट्स.
अशें?
जशी आवयची माया जायना कमी, पंचामृता दिता शुद्धतेची हमी. सुपर एक्स्ट्रा लॉंग बासमती रायस, पंचामृता फोर्टिफाइड चक्की फ्रेश आटा, प्रीमियम लॉन्ग क्वालिटी बासमती राइस, हिमालयन पिंक सॉल्ट, वैरायटी ऑफ कोल्ड प्रेस ऑयल्स. पंचामृता.
Years later, if you see the situation, and I'm asking you from the current perspective, looking at the advent of social media, today if Indira Gandhi was there and she had to impose an emergency, do you think it would survive even for a month, or it would explode into a massive mass agitation across India?
It's what we discovered in 75, and I hope it's not true today, that the first people to accept dictatorship were the elites. they found it very convenient, right? They gave only lip service. It was the people who
Economic
stood.
elite, you mean to say.
Very social elite, economic elite.
Businessman, business class.
Yes, all of them find it very convenient because they said, oh, discipline has come back. Now we can move forward. And this has been historically true of dictatorships. The elites have always found their welfare in dictatorship because they too don't like accountability.
Sir, when you were Union Minister of External Affairs, you have made a statement that emergency during 75 was almost like a Jallianwala Bagh incident in free India.
Yeah, it was because it was an assault, a massacre of principles. It was a massacre of everything that India represented. It was a massacre of India's deep consciousness and India's sense of itself, right? But it also provoked. India rose from slumber that day, just as Jallianwala aroused a nation from slumber. After all, we had accepted British atrocities for 100 years before that. This was not the first time that the British had imposed atrocities. The British had killed millions through famine. India never protested. India just was somnolent. India was quiet. But that one incident in Amritsar and sort of massacre of pilgrims, Sikh pilgrims, Hindu pilgrims, people who had gone to the festive environment, Muslims, everyone, Baisakhi, everyone, right? And that was sparked off a national regeneration. And that sense emergency sparked off a regeneration. And after that, no one in power will ever have the courage to impose another in emergency.
जॉन बाब टायर झाल्या मरे ब्रेक आनी कशें लागतले
मुझे भाशेन हड्डे जाले इथे
हॉडी चेंज कर मरे
कितें
टायर चेंज कर मरे
खंय चेंज केला बरें येच योकोहामा टायर एक्सप्रेस
ओय योकोहामा टायर एक्सप्रेस सगळे टायर सोल्युशन एका जाग्यार नवे टायर्स विथ 5 years अनकंडिशनल वॉरंटी
वाह
मॅगविल्स
वाह
टायर चेंज टायर सर्विस
वाह
नायट्रोजन गॅस बिल अलाइनमेंट एंड बॅलन्सिंग
अरे वाह.
पेपरलेस बिलिंग आनी जायते हे सगळे बेस्ट प्राइस आनी एक्सप्रेस सर्विस
गाडी सारकी बटर आणि सर्विस सारकी फास्ट मरे
फास्ट नो एक्सप्रेस योकोहामा टायर एक्सप्रेस ऑपोजिट सनशाइन हॉस्पिटल आलेम हायवे मारगांव आनी मग दोतरा घेवत मरे
पळय
Sir, 50 years down the line, they are still taunting Congress over the emergency. Is it fair right now that 5 decades down the line, they have to explain something which was done by someone who doesn't exist right now?
All that the Congress has to do is to accept that it was a mistake. And then it will become part of history. As long as they keep justifying it on one rationale or the other, they open themselves to criticism. Let them accept that, yes, Mrs. Gandhi made a mistake.
Okay, sir, and last segment, and I won't let this opportunity go away. You are former External Affairs Minister of country. And I also read your statements wherein you called Pakistan as a double-faced nation. How do you look at the entire Operation Sindoor and the incidents that have happened? After that, it didn't stop there between India and Pakistan. Right now, it is happening between US and Iran. That is happening. It's going global right now. First, are you looking at Third World War? And secondly, should India do something right now?
Well, I describe Pakistan basically as a jelly state. A jelly state, jelly will neither melt nor will it ever become stable. And because it is ruled by the army and because it has nuclear power, it has become a toxic jelly state. A toxic jelly state that believes that survival depends upon spreading poison. What is the essential difference between a civilian government? However inimical the civilian government might be to us, a civilian government has a vested interest in re-election. and therefore knows that re-election will only come if, apart from other things, it also invests in the welfare of the people. But an army in Pakistan knows that the only justification for power is hostility towards India. Otherwise, why should the army be in power? And therefore, the army gets frightened by the prospect of peace and then destabilizes. Just as out of the blue, Pakistan's General Munir made that speech about Hindus and Muslims being unable to live with each other, right? It was a speech which was bizarre. It was a speech which was so vitriolic that, and when we went on a delegation to Europe, I reminded them, I said that the army has sponsored ethnic cleansing. That is what Pahalgam was. Face it, it was ethnic cleansing. When you strip a person and to find out a religion in order to kill, it's not senseless. It is basically purposed killing. And this is fascism. This is what Europe faced. So if Europe and the West doesn't recognize fascism now, then it forgets that this poison has no geography. It may be, Pakistan may be trying to inject it in Kashmir today. It is the same thing which it will inject in Bradford and Leeds and Britain and Europe. In fact, one aspect of General Munir's speech has not been highlighted, in which he said that it was a philosophy of supremacy. And he told those overseas Pakistanis who are going to return to Britain and Europe that you are supreme, you are superior. Don't ever think that you're the equal of Britishers and Europeans.
It's like a toxicity that they have.
Absolutely, it's poison. It's poison. And that poison will become violence. Of course, the one thing we can depend upon when it comes to the Pakistan army is possibly low IQ. That only the Pakistani army could announce support for Nobel Prize for President Trump, just one day before he ordered the attack on Iran. Of course, I'm not saying that the President of the United States may not actually become an advocate of peace. Of course, peace on his terms. And we will see what the future brings to that region, to this extremely volatile region. But that was mistiming of a high order.
Enough said! Enough said, let's end start drinking in the rhythm. What you're feeling is the vibe. About to make a drink and wanna race it to the tribe. Minutes is the time when I'm bringing in the ride. Enough said, let's end start join the tribe. Enough said! Never see me cause I'm racing against the time. Wanna hear you scream. Never see me cause I'm taking what is mine. This your time, now you
Last question. Are we looking at Third World War right now?
What is a world war? A world war is a different conflagrations joining up. And if you look at it, I've written an essay which I hope you will be able to read. It was in Open magazine, in which I said, if you look at it at the moment, the chain of wars, how far is Ukraine from Chechnya, which has a continuous rebellion? It is like from Goa to southern Maharashtra, literally, to the first district of southern Maharashtra, from Chechnya to the Caucasus, from the Caucasus to Syria, all within very close distance. Syria, from Syria to Palestine, from Palestine to the Red Sea, right? From the Red Sea now to Iran, Israel and Iran. And from the Red Sea, from Aden, how far is Gwadar? To the Indo-Pak conflict. Right? It's all within a dangerous chain. And we have to work very hard to ensure that this chain does not blow up into a common war.
Doesn't flare up actually.
Yeah.
So what role India can play right now?
India is, I think, playing a very important role. One, of providing balance. Two, of reaching out. The Prime Minister reaches out to all sides, right? Because India has credibility. India has credibility with Iran. India has important friendship with Israel, right? And people both know that it is not at the cost of the other. That India basically, under Prime Minister Modi, is a force for resolution, not a force for conflict.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir, for giving time,
Yeah.
actually spending time with us.
Thank you.
So I'll explain them in Konkani. So
Yeah,
that
sure.
our channel is in Konkani.
Sure,
And please follow Goa News Hub. It's a news based
of course.
out of Goa. So ह्या आशिल्लें आमचें अकबर ते म्हणटा की सद्याचें सिच्युएशन आसा तें जर फ्लेअर अप जायत रावलें देन इट वूड बी वेरी डिफिकल्ट बट एज फार एज इंडिया इज कन्सर्न इंडिया इज प्लेइंग अ वेरी स्टेबल रोल in the entire conflict, and as far as emergency is concerned, he is the person who has seen the emergency days, so no who else can describe those days better than himself. तुम पळयतात गोवा न्यूज, कीप वॉचिंग.